Greetings and well met. I'm Haradea, and this is my guide to playing as a horse archer in Kingdom Come Deliverance. I am running a couple of quality of life mods like halberds and increased carry weight, and I'm using the HUD through the console to get the full screen effect. So if my game looks a little different to yours, that's why. But it's nothing game breaking, and I keep it within the limits, so it's all good. So I've finished the game twice now, and the first time I played it a good character, as you're meant to, and the second time I played it I played a bit of a villain, and I played him as a horse archer, and I really enjoyed that, so I think you guys will enjoy it too. So now, the first thing you're gonna need as a horse archer is to train yourself up as an archer. So there's this fellow in Rattay called Huntsman Berthold, and he has pretty much everything you need for archery, so head over to him and pick up all of the arrows you can buy. And I'm pretty sure there's no strength or agility requirement for the arrows, but check the bows because they actually show what you're going to need to use it properly. So you can start off with a really simple one, and it goes all the way up to the yew longbow, which has a strength of 15. You can see my character's already pretty high leveled, so it's no biggie. That being said, the two bows I'm going to be using for most of this playthrough are the Cumin bow, which has a pretty high hitting power, close to the yew longbow, and I just like the look of it, and the other one is the Capon's hunting bow, but it's a modified version that has stats equivalent to the yew bow, so it's not game breaking, but it's got that nice hunting aesthetic. And I should say, if you want to get that bow, you can find it pretty easily on Google. It's on the Nexus mods page with all the others. So now that you've got your arrows and your bow, you're going to head down to the Tournament Master and get some practice.
God be with you. Is there someone here who can compete with me in archery?
I'm sure someone can be found. How good are you with a bow, so I can find you a suitable opponent?
I reckon I can take on the best.
Bold words. Well, we'll see, we'll see. The best archers shoot 21 arrows. Splendid. Here's some arrows for you. But you can use your own if you want. Meanwhile, I'll round up the competition. Copy. Right, archers, let's begin.
So not only is this a great way to get some early groschen to buy your equipment, this is going to help you learn the basic bow mechanics and become a good foot archer, which is essential to figuring out the mounted archery side of things. Now granted, this will be a lot harder when you first start, and especially if you do the hardest difficulty, because these guys will pretty much always hit the center of the target, and the only way to actually beat them is to finish first, so you get an extra 3 points. And there you see both the Tailor and the Huntsman end up with 63, and I just get past them with 66. So go ahead and try that with as many bows as you can, and it'll greatly help your understanding of the mechanics. So the next step to becoming Master Archer is to go to Ladachko and talk to Vatsek.
God be with you.
I'd like to try chumps one more time.
Of course. Ah, one more chump. Excellent. So how much will you bet?
I'm a greedy bugger.
No half measures. What's there to save for anyway?
That's the betting over with. Now here are your arrows. Farewell.
Okay, so the basic premise of chumps is that there's 3 archers with different colored arrows, and we all have to shoot our arrows into the log, and whoever gets the most arrows into the log wins the game.
Let's see you beat that.
Now, a little trick that you can do here if you're having a bit of trouble is to actually call your horse in the middle of the game and hop on your horse and that'll give you a little bit of elevation, but it also allows you to ride out into the water a little and still shoot. This is kind of cheating, and I'll show you how far you can go out if you really want to, but it's probably better if you stay on the shore and actually get good at doing that, unless you really need the money, of course.
It's too deep here.
And probably the other main thing to remember is to look down your arrow shaft as a line of trajectory, because it actually lines up quite well with where the arrow will end up.
Another on target.
And one last trick, if you're playing a villain or if you're just a soul loser like me, is that you can take your horse and put it in front of the other archers and prevent them from getting a high score. The score you're after is, I think, 18, 19 or 20, because then when you talk to Vatsek, you can get a special bonus.
Time's up, folks. One last arrow and that's it.
Another on target.
Hit home.
So, how did it go?
Well, it would seem you hit more than I ever have, which means I take my cap off to you, Henry. You're the finest archer I know. Here are your winnings, and stop by here again sometime. I have something you might be interested in.
You said if I...
So I did, didn't I? You've impressed me, Henry.
Thank you.
In my younger days, I learned a certain trick. Then I fell in a ditch once, drunk, and injured my hand, so I can't do it anymore. But I can teach you the knack of it.
Really? Well, I'm certainly not going to say no.
Good luck to you.
So now with that nice little XP boost from Vatsek, we're gonna head back to Rattay, north to the block of land surrounded by the river, to a little field with a bunch of circles on it, which when you get there you'll see are large, tall hay bales. So the idea here is to treat the hay bales as a kind of target system and apply the bow skills you've just learned on the river to the horse, and practice moving around with the horse while shooting. So you want to be shooting over the left shoulder of the horse and over the right shoulder, and swiveling around and shooting and learning the load times and the different speeds of the horse and how that affects the aim. And the other thing you want to get your Henry to master is the difference between the different types of arrows. The biggest difference I can see is that the long distance arrows fly further and straighter, whereas most of like the heavy piercing arrows, which do the most damage, drop off quickly. Now I realize this is probably a good time to say that when I played my Henry as a horse archer, I gave myself the condition that I wouldn't wear plate armor. I'd only wear light armor and clothes, which is why he looks the way he does in this playthrough. And that's because I thought there ought to be a mechanic in the game that makes plate armor inhibit archery, but there really isn't, so it's too easy to be overpowered as a horse archer. So I think if you play as a horse archer, you should probably play light armor, which means the biggest challenge is getting pulled off your horse, and you'll get killed quite quickly when you do get pulled off. So I'd strongly suggest that you do wear light armor or clothes if you're going to play as a horse archer, and just play it as a challenge, and also learn as quickly as you can to get back on your horse and try not to be a hero too often.
Go on, weaken the knees of you.
Okay, so you've now finished the basic training and you're ready to begin the more interesting parts of horse archery, except the decisions you make now will depend on the moral standpoint of your Henry. That's to say, the suggestions I would have require a slightly immoral Henry. If you're gonna play a fully lawful Henry, then you shouldn't engage in hunting. So what that means is to get practice as a horse archer, you're gonna need to fight bandits or more targets, which won't really help you with the movement dynamics that you'll need for horse archery. That being said, hunting is fun, and playing a chaotic Henry or an evil Henry is also fun. Now, the way I would advise you to learn horse archery hunting is in 3 stages. The first is to ride your horse to a standstill and then shoot off the horse to get an idea of the angles and the elevation and the distance of the arrows. The second is to walk with the horse while shooting, so you start to get an idea of the movement. And the third is to go at a full gallop or a canter or whatever it's technically called. And the whole point of that system is so that when you're riding at full speed in actual combat, enemies can't dismount you. So as you can see here, I'm killing a variety of animals in the King's Wood using the ride forward, stop and shoot mode. A lot of people seem to complain about the archery, especially console players, which is maybe understandable, but personally I would have been much happier if they made it harder. And I like to finish respectfully with the stag, because he's kind of the king of the woods. So you see now I'm making the transition to walking with the horse, it's probably called a canter I suppose, and shooting just while the horse is walking but not running yet.
Yeah.
Now, because the game doesn't have a reticle for the shooting like most games like Skyrim or shooting first-person shooters have, it can be quite difficult to figure out the archery, but I still think the trick is to use the shaft of the arrow as kind of a line, and imagine the arrow just kept going straight as a line, and line that up with the animal and just figure it out. After a while, I think you just start to look where you're gonna shoot and the arrow goes where you want it to go, kind of like in real life archery, and I think it'll work itself out so long as you give it enough time. And I think it's probably worth spending the time to thank Warhorse and mention how goddamn beautiful this game is to hunt in. It's like a green, lush wilderness to slaughter creatures in. Fantastic. 10 out of 10. And for these last half dozen animals, you can see I've been sprinting with the horse, full gallop. And you can kind of walk behind the animals like this, so long as you sprint at the last moment, sprint up next to them and shoot into them, because that'll train you to compensate for how it will be in actual combat with enemies. And as we get now up to this very last stag here, it's worth mentioning, in case you happen not to know, that hunting is a really great way to make money if you're running low on money, because you can get the meat from all these animals and sell it to any miller, or you can cook it and sell it to any merchant, and it makes a lot of money that way. But you have to keep it fresh or use preservation potions from alchemy. So the alternative to hunting wild game is to hunt domesticated animals, which is sheep and cattle. And the idea here is that they're generally in open fields, easier to track down, easier to shoot, and you find them in slow herds. But again, this will require your Henry to have a lower moral threshold, I suppose, to be less concerned about killing people's property rather than killing on the king's land, I suppose. It is worth mentioning that killing herds of cattle, in my opinion, is actually closer to fighting in the open with other humans, because you can shoot over both sides of the horse more easily, and you can maneuver in the same way that you would in combat. And finally, the best way to practice killing men in suits of armor is killing men without suits of armor. So this can be either minor bandits, or you can kill civilians. So obviously your Henry will have to be evil if you choose to do that, and you'll probably have to take a Black Prince approach, where you're loyal to one faction but willing to get a low reputation with the other factions and kill civilians on the land of the other factions. So you can actually play a criminal quite well like this, because you can have a high reputation in one town. So the idea then is that if you choose to play that way, you kill wayfarers, villagers that are isolated, and any lightly armed people before you attempt to engage with any heavily armed opponents, especially at an early level. Now, I don't fully understand why, but the mechanics of the bandit camps, which are going to be the primary source of income and combat in the game, are in such a way that often if you rush into the camp and start shooting them, several of them, if not all of them, will scatter and they'll just flee. And I expect that if you fought on foot, they would generally get away. But if you fight on horse, you can often chase them down and kill them and take their loot. So it's pretty good practice to shoot running targets. For wayfarers and the like, combat mode can be quickly achieved by shooting the ground next to the opponent.
Help here!
I do find it terribly interesting that I really enjoyed playing a good Henry and felt quite obliged to my faction and to my citizens and like the survivors of Skalitz. But when I played the evil character, I also really enjoyed being evil. So there you have it. I'm going to hell. I think also, given that my Henry uses a cumin bow and cumin armor, if a psychologist were to talk to him, or a psychotherapist, they'd think he had some pretty severe cumin issues. But it also gives you an interesting insight to what it would be like to be one of those cumin raiders, to ride around and loot and pillage and that kind of thing. And like I said, you can still be quite loyal to your town if you want to, and that's no problem. Just a standard medieval ruffian. I guess the biggest thing to take out of it is you will become very good at shooting people and shooting animals and shooting anything really. So that's that. Okay, so at this point my character finally got attacked by a light band of brigands, as in not wearing heavy armor, not heavy weapons. And this is a good opportunity to probably learn how you'll fight on horseback first, which is the same way we started with the hunting, which is to ride and then stop, turn back and shoot. This way you can quite clearly see where your shaft is. And you can see I pretty cleanly take out this band of guys, so it does work. And they have a pretty hard time taking you off your horse, because you run through them, so you just have to make sure you don't let them actually get to you while you're still.
that the best?
As far as your horse goes for attributes and the like, I think probably speed is the most important. And on top of that, what you want is to get a good saddle if you want to carry meat with 4 saddlebags, and also military horseshoes and golden spurs for control. As far as taking prisoners goes, I generally go with the Genghis Khan or Chinggis Khan, the Mongol approach, which is, if they surrender before the fight, I'll disarm them and let them go, but if they fight me, they suffer the consequences. So once you have the riding and stopping, and perhaps riding in straight lines and shooting sorted out, it's a good idea to try circling and shooting. This is good because in a relatively small area you can maintain distance like I'm doing here with this cumin, and still just pick at them and they won't figure out a way to get to you. It is harder to hit them than straight lines, but you get the opportunity and you get them. And the last thing that's maybe worth the time to learn with horse archery is basic strategy. You're not gonna win the same way as you do with a halberd or sword and full plate. It's generally a good idea when you're taking out bandit camps to pick off the patrols, lure them out into open flat fields, and don't get in amongst a group of them. So take a look how I dispatched this camp here as an example.
Hey! Who's there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Over here! Where is everyone? Quick!
Yeah.
To arms! Get over here! Alarm!
I'll fight you, sir. Can't hide from me.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And that's about all I have in the way of guidance. I think it's a really fun way to play the game, and I'd recommend it to anyone who wants to play a second time through or third time through. Maybe give it a try as an evil character. I don't think they would have put wayfarers and the like on the road if you weren't maybe meant to be a little bit evil. I don't know. So the rest of the video will be pretty much showing how strong horse archery can be and the kind of interesting situations you can resolve with it, and showing off Warhorse's beautiful Bohemia. So thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
Yeah.
Who's there? Watch out!
Yeah.
Over here! Where is everyone? Quick! Alarm! Watch out!
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Hey, who's there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Quick! You're dead! To arms! Get over here! I'm go.
Yeah. Yeah.
You call that combat?
Yeah.
Raise the alarm! Watch out!
What's the matter? Come on.
To arms!
Wait. Gone weak.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
This won't take long. You call that combat? Gone weak at the knees, have you? Is that all you got? You, stop right where you are. Surrender!
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
What have we here? What's that? Show us what you've got. And maybe we won't kill you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Come here, Lily.
Yeah.
Bring it on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Call that combat.
So it was you. You son of a bitch.
Yeah. Yeah.
Stop him, someone!
Yeah. Yeah.
Somebody help me! Somebody help me!
So you're the shooter.
Had enough?
Yeah, you got me. Look, it was only a few groschen.
No excuses. Hand it over.
Here.
You got the thrashing you deserved. I hope you've learned your lesson.
Yes, sir.
You really let him go? Just like that? And did you get the loot back?
No, he had nothing on him.
Nothing? How come?
He must have dropped it or passed it to an accomplice.
Devious bastards. And just so you know, I'm no pinch purse. Here's a small reward.
Thanks.